But now, should we feel guilty for being British? Well, His Majesty's Revenue and Customs has sparked a backlash after holding a seminar entitled The Guilt of Being British. This during office hours, despite hundreds of thousands of calls from taxpayers going unanswered every single month. Well, the Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch is one of those who have criticised the seminar, challenging Whitehall aides to leave the service if they're not proud of the United Kingdom. Well, are you proud to be British, or are you ashamed? Joining me is to debate this are the political commentator Kane Blackwell and the writer and activist Femi Nylander. Femi, we're going to start with you. What's this sort of seminar about?
I don't know this particular kind of ins and outs of the seminar itself, but I do think that it's very clear that if you're talking about being British, right, having a British passport, that's one thing. If you're talking about history, you're talking about culture, you're talking about this, that, and the rest, it's very clear that you have to be consistent. Either you can be proud and guilty about aspects, or you can't. You're not Isaac Newton. I don't know what you got at your physics GCSE, but I'm pretty sure you probably don't understand half of his theories. You probably don't understand what he's talking about a lot of the time. I certainly don't. So for me to say I'm proud of what he did, well, I'm not. It's not an achievement of mine. In the same way, a lot of British people, they'll say, well, I didn't do the slave trade. Okay, well, if you want to go down that route of you didn't personally do it and therefore you shouldn't personally feel guilt, then you have to be consistent and say, well, you didn't personally do it, and therefore there's no reason to be proud. Either you can be proud of certain things about British history, and therefore British history is a part of you, in which case you have to be ashamed of certain things about British history as well. And when you see little kids starving to death at the moment in Gaza, and you think about the fact that Britain did the same thing in Bengal in India and starved millions of people to death, that is something that you should necessarily understand. And as I say, if you feel proud about certain aspects of British history, think, well, maybe I should feel guilty as well. Or you're consistent and you said, well, I had nothing to do with either of these things. I'm not Isaac Newton. I'm also not Winston Churchill. And therefore, I personally shouldn't feel proud or guilty of either. But I should understand history and understand how it relates to the present and understand why it might have something to do with where we are today.
Strong opening gambit, Femi Nylander. Let's throw that all over to Kane Blackwell. Kane, you can't have your cake and eat it.
Well, I think I am going to eat my cake, and I do think it is important that we acknowledge historical, problems and historical wrongs that took place. Of course, we should. That's history. Every country has had historical wrongs, either done to them or they have done to others. That is history. It's part of life, and it isn't great. But we have done some incredible things as a country, and we've produced incredible people like Isaac Newton, like Winston Churchill, and others. And the British people should be proud of who they are, their ancestors as well. It was our grandparents and great grandparents who were under the siege of the Nazis and stood alone in Europe, while others didn't. We stood alone, and we should be proud of what we are, who we stand for, what we believe in. We produce parliamentary democracy. That's why our parliament is called the mother of all parliaments. We should be proud of being British. We've produced some incredible things. Individuals, yes, but we're all part of the British story. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. It's about being proud of the country that you are in and that you're a part of. And that's what we should be remembering. It isn't about, oh, this person did this and this person did that. We should all be proud of who we are, our flag, our country and our nation.
Femi, is the difficulty in your argument that the entire history of the world, well, it was once described as nasty, brutish and short? Every culture has tried to do some really terrible things to other cultures. War was sort of the natural state of the world for thousands of years. Is it then slightly overzealous to say there is somehow a unique guilt in being British just because for a period of 150 years Britain was top country, the most successful country in the world, so we got to see that play out across the world? I mean, had any other country had as large a reach as Britain, and some did almost have as large a reach as Britain, far greater horrors ensued.
Well, again, you can quote Thomas Hobbes all you like, but at the end of the day, the idea, for example, that Britain stood alone in Europe, the Russians had a massive role to play in defeating the Nazis.
Not for the first 2 years, Femi. For the first 2 years, there was the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, the Nazi-Soviet Pact.
And then how many, yes, after that, what happened? Winston Churchill also expressed sympathy for Nazis at one point. I mean, the Nazis, like the royal family in the United Kingdom, went to visit the Germans, and there's photos of them doing Nazi salutes. Europe, for a long time, dabbled with fascism, and that's not, and Europe, and again, a lot of the Nazis' own policies were based on the ideas of eugenics developed in Britain. Like Hitler praised people like Francis Dalton, who developed the theories of eugenics.
The socialist movement did, the Fabians, all of the rest of it, that did promote eugenics in the United Kingdom.
Just socialists.
That
I mean, I'm talking about UCL and Francis. No, it wasn't. Francis Galton was a UCL academic who had nothing to do with any kind of academic political party. He was an academic at UCL who came up with the fundamental academic bases for the theory of eugenics, which was then implemented in Germany in Namibia, and also implemented in Germany in the Holocaust, and also implemented by Britain, and also implemented by Britain, as I say, by people like Winston Churchill. When you look at the Bengal famine and the idea that the Indians are breeding like rabbits and the famine is their own fault, whilst we're exporting grain out of India and basically exacerbating famine.
And
so again,
disputed.
these are things which we need to. Well, it's not. It's a matter of the historical record.
It's a matter of record that there was a famine, but of course there were lots of famines before industrialisation.
The quote, "The Indians are breeding like rabbits," is well documented, and you can say it's disputed, but anyone can go and Google it and look at the sources from where that quote comes. The fact that Winston Churchill again exported grain out of India at the time is also well documented. So when you see those images of starving children in Gaza, there's a historical precedent to this.
Shall we bring Kane Blackwell in now? Because, of course, as Femi has pointed out, there are examples of where it would be pretty nasty to live under the British Empire. And sure, it may well have been nastier to live in Leopold II's Congo, but just because other countries were worse doesn't mean that Britain didn't do bad things.
Of course. No one's denying that Britain didn't have a role to play in some very dark situations in the world. No one's denying it. But I believe that our good has outweighed our bad. We have done so much to give the world. We gave the world railways. We gave the world, like I say, democracy, free speech. All of these things are so important, and they're part of who we are. Now, I don't see why we always have to denigrate ourselves and always feel really bad about everything that's happened in the past. We can feel good, we can feel proud, while looking back and also saying, yes, there were historical wrongs that took place. We acknowledge that, we're not denying it, but we are now saying that we as Britain are important. We have done some incredible things in the world. We're not called Great Britain for nothing, and we should remember that. And the fact that HMRC, bringing this back to the original story, the HMRC are allowing their workers on office time to take part in this seminar is a smack in the face to British taxpayers, and it is totally wrong. We need, and the woke mind virus has infected Whitehall, and we need a Trump-style revolution in terms of DEI being swept away to actually take hold of this country now, because we've seen it in the US. What has happened? The institutions in the US have taken it away. Now we're seeing business. Now we're seeing ads. Now we're seeing the whole culture change, and it all comes from government. And this is where we need a huge culture shift and be proud of who we are as Britons.
Well, Femi Nylander, we started with you. Kane Blackwell, we ended with you. Thank you both, gentlemen, for joining us here in that sparky debate. Well, we should say in a response, HMRC has issued the following statement. Events by staff networks should not be taken as reflecting the views of HMRC. An event like this would only be attended by 0.1% of staff, which would have no impact on our ability to staff our helplines. We have robust procedures in place to ensure our phone lines are well resourced throughout the day.